Internet, welcome to my first ever vlog called, let's clean up all these tools. Actually, we're just gonna do kind of an overview of my Beetle here, because the last time I did a video on this car, they've been just kind of here and there and throughout the years, and so I figured I will update you on what it's currently doing, and gonna do some work today and then go test it, and then we're gonna autocross tomorrow. So race prep, I guess. So first off, this is a 1973 Super Beetle. If you're not familiar with Beetles, the Super Beetle started in 1971, has a different front suspension than the older Beetles, and basically from here forward, it is an entirely different car. There is nothing the same as an old style torsion rod beam suspension Beetle. In 1973, it was the first year of the curved windshield. And so along with that, we've got a different dash. But let's just go over mods here. This car has a ton of mods. I'll just start at the front and go to the way back. Turn signals are shaved off the fenders, moved into these Mexican market bumpers. I think Europe also got these bumpers, but anyways, you get them from Mexico. Anyway, it's got a Cam-A front splitter. This is a fiberglass replica because Cam-A doesn't make those anymore. But I think that is really adds to the look of the Super Beetle. Front suspension. Oh boy, hang on. Okay, front suspension. We've got up in here Top Line Max Struts. The company that makes these things is called Top Line. I've got a big front sway bar here, also from Top Line. All new steering components and stuff. If we peek through these wheels really quick, you can see we've got front disc brakes. These are just your average run-of-the-mill Carmen Ghia front disc conversion. I've got 16-inch Porsche Fuchs here. These are 16x6s in the front, 16x7s in the rear. They don't have any caps on them because the caps run into the Beetle hubs and because I think it looks pretty race car without them. These are Bridgestone RE71R tires, 205 50 16 in the front. Yep, 225 50 16 in the rear. These are the autocross tire. If you want to go fast in a street class, which requires you to have a 200 tread wear or greater tire, RE71Rs, the fastest tire, period, end of story. So that's what I've learned this year, and that's why I put them on my car. All right, let's take a step inside here. Take a peek at what's going on inside. So in here, this year, I put in these seats. These are just your kind of average eBay seat. This is an NRG Type R seat. It's a foldable seat, so I've got a lever here, and it'll fold forward, or I can recline it. It's got a slider. These things are pretty cheap. I think they were, what was it, $260 for the pair, plus shipping. Shipping was pretty expensive up here to Alaska, but in the States you could get these things shipped to you right off the bat for $260. I've got these cheap 4-point harnesses that came with them too. I probably will replace these eventually and put a proper harness bar in here. That needs to happen. Down here I've got something interesting. This is my pedal situation. You can see this riser. I built this year. I still need to kind of finish it up. It's still just bare steel. But this moves your feet about 1.5 inch off the ground, and it makes it so that you can rest your heel on the pedal riser and pivot between brake and gas, which really helps when driving fast. The gas pedal you can see is a Moon Eyes gas pedal. I got that from a dune buggy that we had as a parts car, so it was kind of fun. I
couldn't resist putting it in here. I think these pedals also came out of that, and these are old style pedals. I think these came from like an older Beetle, but I used these instead of the 73 ones because they're cast aluminum and they've got this cool meat cleaver thing going on. So, all right, moving on. Next thing in the interior. We've got your typical gigantic autometer tack here. This came out of a parts car, so I didn't buy it. But because I had it, I put it in here. Ideally, I would have something that would be more in the field of view when you're driving, but this works. This here is a 2-step rev limiter with a potentiometer. So this interfaces with my MSD6AL ignition system. When I push this button, I get an adjustable rev limit that I can set to launch the car. I almost never use this. Here we've got your stock combo gauge, speedometer, fuel gauge, broken odometer. Here, fucking, if you have an air-cooled VW, get an oil temp gauge. This is the fucking best mod I ever did. Before I had this, and I just installed this year, I was always slightly stressed when driving the car around because I had no idea how hot the engine was. If you have a temperature gauge and it's pointing at the right temperature, it eases the driving experience. Now it's more like driving a water-cooled car where I just go, oh yeah, it's not overheating. Before it was like, oh yeah, it might be overheating. Do I have to go Jerry Seinfeld on you? Get a temperature gauge. Next thing, I've got just some extra switches here. One for the fuel pump, one for the fan on the oil cooler. And then I've got just a stock radio here. Oh, I almost forgot. Shifter. So this is another important part of your air-cooled VW is the shifter. If you have an air-cooled, you know the stock shifter blows, and you know most shifters suck. This one is a old Hurst style knockoff. So it's got the little trigger here you lift up for reverse lockout. It's not the shortest throw, but it's pretty good. But here's the thing. I think this is probably the best shifter you can get for Beetle. Well, I take that back. The Bug Tech or whatever is like freaking crazy expensive and really nice, and everything's billet and whatever. But look, you can get these things for like $60 and it works great. Before this shifter, I had a Gene Berg, which is another one of those shifters that gets a ton of hype, and it sucked. I hated it. But it was a T-handle. It was so short that I had to reach all the way down here to shift it. And they had shortened the throw so much that your side-to-side movement was so small that you could barely tell if you're in first, second, or third, fourth. And so I did an autocross with that shifter, and I kept shifting into third. I kept shifting into fourth. It was not good. So if you're doing autocross where you're most of the time in first or second gear, this shifter is way better. And I actually have a mod that I'm planning on doing to this shifter that will make it the best air-cooled shifter ever. So I guess stay tuned for that if I keep up this vlog thing. So that's about it for the interior. Interior beyond those mods is totally stock. You can see my hacky belt mounting there. It's just going to the old rear seat mount, belt mounts. Now out back is where almost all of the modifications are. So you can see I've got the Fuchs again in the rear. It's lowered, which of course on a VW is just re-indexed torsion rods. You can lower the rear of a stock VW without modifying anything really. I'll toss a light in here. We'll go to this right away. Actually, never mind, I'm gonna hold this. So this right here is my oil cooler. I tried to get it as tight up in the fender well as possible without touching the tire, and I actually had the wheel and tire on here, and I disconnected the spring plate and moved the wheel and tire through its whole range of motion, and it doesn't hit, so that's good. What can I say? This is a custom mount. It's your average air-cooled VW oil cooler system that, you know, Impy or whatever made and everyone's copied. And it's just got an electric fan, some AN fittings, some hoses. What it really is it's a B&M transmission cooler, but it gets sold as an oil cooler. Because, well, I mean, a transmission cooler is an oil cooler. But anyway, let's not goof around here. Let's get to the real goods here. Yeah. Boom. There it is. This is a 2332 built by Jansen Enterprises. It's got 48 IDAs, dual Webers, MSD ignition. This is basically the biggest Type 1 VW engine you can build without going to like a Type 4 platform or something like that. So, you know, 2332cc is 2.3 liter. If you're not hip to the lingo, let's see what else do we got to show. It's kind of, you know, it's not that much to see out here, but I've had this engine a little bit apart, and it is really nice inside. It's got ported heads. Manifolds are match ported to the heads. It's good stuff. Makes pretty good power. This doesn't, you know, the thing with air-cooleds is back in the day, this probably was like, whoa, crazy fast, you know, if you were back in the mid-70s or whatever, just because the fact that it's rear-engined and the tires that were available. But now, this is a pretty slow car, you know, maybe high 13s, maybe. Because it's a full interior, full-weight Super Beetle. If you had an older car, this would be more power, but I had this thing on the dyno. It made 140 horsepower to the wheels on an all-wheel drive Mustang dyno, so take that how you will. It does okay. We've got A1 Sidewinder exhaust. This is a pretty nice little exhaust, although I did have tire clearance issues. So the Fuchs and the 225s rubbed the muffler a little bit, and then I tried to... Anyways, there's a whole story with that. Let's talk about body mods, because I've actually got quite a bit going on back here, and you may not notice if you're not a air-cooled guy, so let me... So if you look at this, obviously this is a 73, so we've got older tail lights. These are 68 or something lights. I don't really know. I got them locally and whatever. I think they're 68 lights, but they could be from, it's a range. Anyway, the important part is the deck lid, apron, and bumper. They are significantly changed. So when I was building this car, I noticed that in 67, they went to this square bottom deck lid. Now, the later model cars also had the square bottom deck lid. 66 in back had a round bottom. But the 67 deck lid was 1 year only, and then in 68, the federal government mandated a minimum bumper height. So they had to raise the bumpers and thus shorten the deck lid. It is my opinion that if VW had their druthers, they were unrestrained by the federal government, they would have left the bumpers where they are and had the deck lid stay as long as it is. So, because of that, that's why I put the 67 deck lid on here, and I lowered the rear bumper about 1 inch, I think. And I think it makes for just about the best looking late model rear end you could get. The 73 bumpers originally sat about 1 inch higher. It had these giant tail lights, and I don't think it looked that good. The other thing is this deck doesn't have any vents. That's because I don't have the balls to cut this original 67 deck lid and put in vents, because you have to do that. And this was like a perfect original deck lid. That was a new old stock apron. So I lucked out on that. These are reproduction bumpers. You can notice they've got the the plain mounts here. There's no shock absorber. In 73, it was the last year of the plain bumper mounts. In 74, they went to the shock absorber. I don't know what else to say back here. The other thing is it's got a full flow oil system, so it's got a remote oil filter. It leaks oil because it's a fucking VW, and yeah. Well, so that's the other thing, is that you've got a low sump back here, which makes it hard to go really low with the back of the car. I kind of would like it to be a little lower, but this is okay. I'm fine with this height. And that sump has had a tendency to hit the ground before. But one more mod to the rear end, but you can't see it right now. I just put these in last night. I just recently upgraded to bigger rear torsion bars. These are the original ones. These are 22 millimeter. I went to a 26. Now, that may be too big, but it was the cheapest, or it was the smallest of the cheaper range of torsion bars that you get off CIP1. So, from whatever this is, latest rage, high performance products and accessories. Man, that is a logo worthy of Cletus McFarland. So there's a cheaper range of torsion bars you can get from CIP1, but they go from like 26 to 28 because they're made for like off-road stuff where you're hitting big bumps and things like that. So anyways, I went with the 26. The other option would be to use a Swayaway brand torsion bar, and you can get any size you can dream of with those, or to use Porsche 944 torsion rods, but both of those cost about twice as much as the 26 mil bars I bought. So I figured I'd try that, and it actually, all things considered, is really not all that stiff. If I sit on the bumper here and bounce on the car, I don't know how well you can see that, but it bounces pretty good. So yeah, and I took a test drive last night. It drove pretty good. So I'm hoping that won't make for just like drift craziness at this autocross. So for this next event, I'm going to do one more thing to the car before tomorrow's autocross. And that is, I'm going to adjust my struts up to their maximum height, which at this point is just more preload. Honestly, top line, if you're listening, these things are way too fucking low. I'm only on the second notch down from the top, and I'm tucking tire. And there's 8 more notches to go lower. That's just gonna dump the car. What? Why would I do that? Anyways, it just needs a longer strut cartridge so it can go taller, but hopefully just a little more preload will raise it up while stiffening the spring a bit. So let's get to work. Well, first I have to clean up my mess. All right, we got her back down on the ground. You can see I've actually got quite a bit of gap now. This is probably not the hippest thing these days. Everyone wants stance. But although I didn't have any rub problems, the thing is with, particularly with old cars like this car doesn't have a lot of caster angle. So anytime you get a rake, you end up reducing caster in the front. And when I initially installed those bigger rear torsion rods, I had it too high, and then it was like zero caster. There was like no caster at all. So lowering the back down should solve that a bit. Raising the front up a tad should help that too. But most importantly, the splitter gets real close to the ground. So before I barely had a fist's height, now I've got like a fist and an inch. So that's probably like 4 inches or something. So really quick, some people may notice this. I just wanted to gloss over what this is. So a couple of years ago, I slid into a ditch. And at that time, I didn't have the correct hardware on the sway bar. And so the way the front suspension works on these things, the sway bar locates the control arm forward and aft. What happened is I slid into this ditch, the control arm ripped off of the sway bar, and the wheel came back and munched to that. I also have some front apron damage. I've got a new front apron, so all of that. The plan is to fix that this winter. I've got a new fender already, and so the plan is to repaint that, put on the new apron, and I might do some more paint stuff because the paint work on this is kind of so-so. But anyways, let's go for a drive, because that's really what fucking matters. And that's also why that hasn't been fixed. It's because I just like driving this thing. So far, everything's doing